Testing, testing.
Yep, we're good.
We're good? All right. Well, thank you all for being patient with us. That was the first time that's happened in our system. So we really appreciate your patience. What you will have to do if you're going to rewatch this, actually, in the future, this video will be on the link that you have. So all the parts of day 1, day 2, part 1 and 2, and then day 3 will be all on the same link that you'll have access to. So, and we'll start in with question and answer, and we'll make up for lost time at the end of the day. So it was about 15 minutes. So starting with a question from Nancy from Vermont. You mentioned that you're intrigued that today that I'm rendering across the painting from right side to left. As a left-hander, I work in the direction so as to avoid the potential for smudging the freshest paint with my hand or sleeve. But you're right-handed. Is that a habit or is it coincidental? No, it really doesn't particularly matter if I go right to left. The idea for me, being that my hand is actually not touching the painting, the idea for me is it's a mental shift, and I think from day 1 to day 2 it's more about slowing down slightly and starting to try to render the thing that you're looking at in a different way than on the first day. So rather than whether it's from the left to the right or right to left, I used to tell people that it was actually more a matter of habit that I would go from left to right because we read that way, and I would scan across the painting in that way. But you know, I also open a book and flip through it backwards, so maybe I'm comfortable going the other way. What's the best way to get your grips with color mixing and understanding also how to get the accurate value? There is a free video on YouTube that I created, and it talks about taking the actual object and trying to hit the note on your palette, and I think that could be really useful for you. If you haven't seen it, search Michael Klein, East Oak Studio, color mixing, and it should pop up. And it's about I think it's like a 10-minute video. And so that'll go through all the stuff that you can want to know about color mixing, I think, in that little short video. Ellen says that, Michael, what I've always liked about your work is that you have a certain restraint. I wonder if you would speak to how you manage painting flowers and not being too saccharine. Thank you. That's a very difficult thing to do, I think. And for me, I think the main thing is the color harmony. I think that if you don't understand proper context of color harmony, it can get really sweet really quick, and it can also get very childish, I think. If the reason why I love the neutral so much is because it grounds your painting and it keeps it really truthful in my mind. It keeps it, the aesthetic of it stays really, really solid. And then the other thing would be the drawing and form. I think that's, for me, when I find my paintings drifting in the direction of, like, it's almost like cut in two right now in my painting. I feel like, because this is not gotten to yet, this has more of a shorthand kind of impressionist, and as I start to refine it and get more meticulous, then it starts to drift into a little bit more serious and heavier, kind of closer to reality. The way I view flowers, I don't think that they're saccharine or sweet. I think they're very beautiful and very deep, and I think it comes across in how you think about the world around you. When you decide to use the oil, and when do you decide to use oil and when not to use it? How does it affect the paint and the painting as opposed to just straight paint? And there should be a consistent progression of more oil in your paint. Depending on the brand that I have, if it's Old Holland or Winsor Newton or Michael Harding, they all have a different kind of oil to pigment ratio. And so you get to know that, and then you take into consideration the oleo gel and how do you incorporate that into your painting. I've noticed with the leg ground as opposed to the gesso, the acrylic gesso, that my leg ground absorbs it more. So I get a lot more sinking in on the lead ground. And so then that would be, if it's sinking in more, that's, I think, a sign of you can safely add a little bit more oil and be fine. And in the dye bond, it's a little bit different than, or the ACM panel, the panel that I'm using. It's a little bit different than a canvas, because a canvas has the foundation and then it also has the linen that it can absorb into. So there's more room for the oil to go. But with the metal and then the ground, there's not a lot of, because the oil's not going to go into the metal. So it stays on your painting stays on the surface more. So there was the question about substituting a liquid. Let's see what else we got. Are there any questions that how many, I think we're good. I think I answered them. If we have some extra time, which it seems like we do, because there's no other questions, I think I'm going to do, I want to do another one of those demonstrations of the value shift of color. I think that'll be really helpful for people. So, put that down there and get this up. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about color. Same idea, except I'm going to go through my yellows. So my yellow, so this was my red. And my yellows, I start with the raw umber. And so instead of the burnt umber, it's raw umber. And you can see how close they are. So it's really only when you put white in it that you can tell the difference of a dark in the raw umber versus the burnt umber. But so you have raw umber, then if it's glazed or thinned out, it goes a little bit lighter. Then I go into my raw sienna. So same way, raw sienna solid would be a little bit darker. And then if it was thinned out, it would go lighter like that. So then you go from the raw sienna into the transition into the cad yellow pale. So it's raw sienna and cad yellow pale here. And then I see a new question came in. So clean my brush and get a real solid, clean cad yellow pale up here. So see, I'm approaching the high chroma. So what did we do yesterday to get the highest chroma? We thinned out the paint. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to clean my brush and thin this out so that it's essentially a glaze of the cad yellow pale. So that's the brightest point. Beyond that, then I go into adding white again. And once I start to add white, then I lose the chroma, but then the value can get close to your lightest light. So when I'm talking about expanding and getting up into your light lights, then you have to clean your brush and pull out your white and make sure you're getting your brightest white in there. See, so that's so no longer it just drops, the chroma just completely goes away from it, but that's my brightest light in that spectrum. So I just got paint all over my hand. Good thing it was titanium. So take this out. Put my painting back up. So now after that demo, you can see the subtlety of color happening here. And so like my yellows are not nearly as chromatic as I could go. So I'm keeping it pretty neutral actually. There's only moments of where the chroma spikes. So I'll go back to the question and answer here. Oh, well, I don't know when that came in. She said, would love to see another color demo. So must
Just before you started.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. All right. Pamela and I are in the same, we're connected. Okay, I'm gonna start painting again if there's no more questions. So this is the last, it would be the last painting hour. And we'll go till about 1:15. So we can,
12 o'clock now.
yeah, so,
8 to 1.
okay, great. So a full hour here. Just kind of building this. There's a variety again of different colors, and so I'm using those different colors as I see them. If you have, in this particular scenario, a CAD lemon would come in handy, but what I do as a substitute is I'll take my CAD yellow pale and transition and just have a little bit of viridian in it so that it's not quite so warm. Now I'll grab my background, continue to adjust the drawing. So there's this back here. Earlier this morning I was looking at it. You have the pitcher plant and it's got this really beautiful part where it cuts in. And so then the back, see, so that's the shape of that. So I'm just carefully adjusting that like top lid or whatever of the flower. It looks like the edge gets lost a little bit, so I'm continuing to work with my background color. And see those little things, it's just, I love those little moments where it brings the block into focus, into a little bit more clarity. And so as I explore that little area, I often say it's like getting to know somebody. If the longer you spend with them, the more conversations you have, the more you get to know about the person. And in painting, especially painting from life, if the longer you can be with the subject, you get to know it a little bit more intimately, and that's what makes these, you see these paintings in museums that are just so carefully done, and that's why we love looking at them, because the artist spent so much time contemplating and really showing reverence to nature and in this world of. I've been noticing lately when I flip through my Instagram, man, I go like 100 miles per hour. I just like, whoo, I go through like 20 images. I'm like, I'm not even looking at anything. My mind isn't, it's not even processing anything. It's just a sign of the times, unfortunately. I'm overlapping overlapping these things that sit in front of it, the leaves. So I paint one and I paint the other, and then I get these natural things that are occurring. And I'm going to jump into the red. You guys cold at all? Do you want to shut the air off? I'm sure it'll get warm, but.
Yeah.
So just compositionally, if I were to squint down, which I'm not, I'm just saying if I did, and you can squint down if you want, I have no problem with that, I'm just clarifying. This would group together here. The part that I'm about to paint these would group together more. The darks, these coexist. They're sharing space. So by knowing that, I can just go ahead and paint them darker, and then the composition, and then they hold together in a way that is closer, truer to nature. It's light. Finding the little shapes of the mint leaves over here again, and just kind of bouncing back and forth. I'm going to go to a dark green and separate this here. Find a chromatic green. All right, so that dark. See, so that little pitcher plant just kind of back there somewhere. It's tucked in behind all these other things I'm doing. I'm not gonna get rid of it. It's still back there, but just to a less degree than it was. Grab a bright yellow. It's actually kind of pink. This is a rose back here. So that rose there, I really don't have it in the right spot. I'm going to try to just keep bumping it. And try to keep bumping this over. grab some green, light green. At the beginning of this, Lewis and I were looking at it, and it's like this really complex setup. And I had mentioned to him that it reminded me of everyone kind of knows my painting of the pile of sticks. When they reference my work, they like that one a lot. And so this, I remember anytime you have something that's complex and it has a bunch of stuff going on in it, it's just really a matter of trying to walk through each part and slow yourself down enough to where you're not flying past a bunch of stuff. I've done quite a bit of workshops now, and so I have experiences that I remember, and one that often happens with different people in different ways, but a critique that I'll give is, did you intentionally leave something out? Like, did you notice that there's this rose back here or something, and when I point it out, they'll be like, oh, I didn't even see that flower. And I think that happens because we're going too quick and we're jumping around too much, and we're not calibrating and looking at, okay, if there's a negative shape here, what is the negative shape? It's actually the rose. Okay, so if I put that down, then what's next to it? There's some mint right next to it, so I triangulate and say, okay, if there's some mint here, then that's a piece of the puzzle. And then behind that, there's another piece of mint that, so it's, then there's, at some point, there's a stem. And so as you go through this thing and you get to know each little part, it all starts to, it's like a puzzle too. I mean, that's a perfect example. Put down a piece of puzzle. There's blue, it's a big sky. You don't quite know how it fits together. Put down that stem. There's a part of the mint that's back in shadow. And then it comes up into the light, so I'll come back over here and grab some of the light. And goes lighter still, so I'm traveling up along that. Here's the oleum here, which goes this way. Go back. It's almost like having some premix colors that you start to have your palette set up in a way that you just return to the flower that you're painting before. You have it set up. This note of violet. So when I over here, I'm transitioning over to the left side of my setup, and I want to take, I feel like I want to take a little bit of the oleo gel, some brown and green, and I want to go in here and I want to kind of oil out as, oh shoot, I just destroyed what I did. Damn. Oops. Oh, we're live. Oh God. I'm losing it. Okay, so I'll clean that. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm attempting to oil out this section and darken it down. So I'm going to paint back into it in a minute. So all this stuff can go darker. It's all grouping together in the same shadow. All this stuff that can go darker. And when I do that, I want to, after I darken it down, I want to immediately jump back up into a really bright light. So I would grab a note of the really light light and I would start to kind of piece this thing back together. And so I would start to cut out these little hopefully on the third day I can really show you guys just how thin the paint can get. Okay, that dark. Kind of hovering between. I may have to make a spot. I want to have a particular spot for that flower because I don't like when I can't find what I'm painting. Now very clearly that's that. So I can now transition down into the shadow side. All right. Now I just want to reinforce kind of the idea of hopefully maybe when the people who were not able to join us live and when you next time we offer this maybe you'll want to try to block out time in your schedule to be able to be with us because I think that I've watched a lot of videos online and to be able to get a sense of the experience in real time and how long it takes to develop a painting or to be present in the environment, or it really is very similar to a workshop. If I'm giving a demo in a workshop, you know, oftentimes people are impatient and they want to paint, and but really it's the opportunity to be able to, that in itself, just seeing how long something takes, the rhythm at, because for instance the videos, it's each one, the flower painting insights and the naturalist still life were about 3 days, I think, and one's 1 hour and one's 4.5 hours. But you just don't get a sense of, you know, yesterday there was a little bit more, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit more rigor and kind of a vigorous way of working. And, you know, you have to block in the background, and so now it's kind of a cleaning up of, I mentioned it yesterday, but you can get a sense of, I'm going to move that violet over to the right. So what is that? That's that one. So that one must have been taller yesterday, but I actually like that it's shorter today. So I'm gonna, rather than keeping and making it up, I'm gonna follow nature and I'm gonna make it smaller. So you have the option of trying to remember what it was or to just paint what you see. And in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and paint what I see because I like it better. It's a little bit too dark, so I'm coming back in. Again, paint that dark first, and then you can paint the light back into it. And then these light greens, oh shoot, overshot that one. These light greens, whether they have yellow, but they're pretty light and chromatic, and they tie into this harmony through here. So I believe this one's the phlox. The phlox flower is a little bit oranger, so it has this yellow, light kind of pale yellow, but then it has a little bit of, I'm going to try cat orange. That could work. I'm going to go ahead and place that here. And it has a dark, so to come down from, I'm using the raw umber and burnt sienna. And so this, what I'm doing here is this is the transition, and see that's the form as it goes up into the light. So that's what I'm thinking. And so I'm taking that shadow side and placing a couple, and then I have the lights up here. The last hour, man. Just flies by, it really does. Okay, so we need a little bit of orange. For the phlox. This brush, it's kind of funny because this brush is actually kind of hard. It wasn't washed well, so it's like got this really weird bend going on to it. But you can still use it. It's about knowing, just thinking it through, thinking about what this, because it's stiff and it's not washed well, and it's got that. I can actually kind of just drag it in a way that is different than if it's not intentional. It's just thinking about what you're using. If I had a stick, somebody said that. I think it was like, was it Kinsler? Give me a stick and I'll paint you a good portrait. I would have liked to see that. But the idea is that know your materials well enough to where you can pivot and really just keep painting. Okay, so now the stock is back here, so I'm gonna because I glazed over it earlier, I'm going to come back in and think about each. This is really thick paint now. You see that? It's like a glob of paint. So think about each one of these things as a new petal, and that's where you have to be really careful. And Fantin Latour was just such a master at it, where he would go through and against the background, if you look at his work, he had just really delicate drawing and form modeling against the dry background, and that's what allowed him to get some of that stuff. I remember I rented a little studio apartment when I first moved to New York, and it was on 82nd Street, and it was 4 blocks from the Met. And I remember having the revelation one day, because we were at Jacob's modeling form, and I was just having a hard time. It was really, for me, it was really difficult, because I'd come from a school that we were all over the place, and we were painting everything, and I had to focus on this one spot all day long, and it drove me crazy. And I also wasn't very good at it, so it was, not only did it drive me crazy, I was out of my comfort zone. And I had this revelation one day at the Met. I was like, Fantin was doing that. And then from then on, I paid attention and got a little bit better at it. And so it's one little thing at a time. There was a student in one of my workshops that just recently talked about, David LaFell talks a lot about the brushwork and making it count. So this is kind of like, this is what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. If it gets a little bit out of hand, then you can come in, and I want to flatten this one. So I just want to press it down and create the shape of that petal. Go back to, this is my mixture for the flocks. Jeez, my brain is just like, goes in, goes out, goes in, goes out. I'm adding that back there. So this is the mixture. This is one that's existing back there. Add some greens. Okay, now coming over here, continuing our journey over to this side, this tulip. How are we doing on time? Good. This tulip here is quite fascinating. Tomorrow you'll be able to see it. It's now gone over. Yeah, you can zoom in on that, John. It's really opened up, and so then there's like a well, is it easy, Louis? Can you pull this in quick, the camera angle? No, I'm not there yet. I actually have to switch back to this internet. What I want to do is get a shot of the, I want to get a shot of that tulip because it's really beautiful the way it is now incorporated into the setup. I think you all agree with me that. So you'll see here, to the left there, you see it's like that. So when I look now at the setup, that tulip here, this thing here, is pretty big over there. So I want to try to get that. I think it'll be worth it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the light and I'm going to get really light. Come in there and just slam that in there. How you guys doing? Did I lose you or are you? You good? Yeah. So the green is overlapping it here in front. And it goes up there, goes around. So this white comes all the way over here. Then there's green almost in front of it. And then you have the darks out here. And I have the bright green again here. So yeah, submit, you can submit your questions for the last 15 minutes of the question and answer. This is a light green leaf here. The phlox is here. Shadow side of that. This transition is, I'll be able to go in and adjust that a little bit tomorrow. I'm going to adjust the shape just a little bit now. So let's grab my background. Put some pink. Green. This green is pretty bright, and then there's a yellow that's maybe it was there yesterday. I'm just now noticing it though. That one is the ranuncula that's really quite bright. So I'm going to bump up the chroma and get that in there. So now you're seeing that. Now it's just interesting. I didn't realize how much it's that way, but you have the red here and you have the yellow here. So I'm going to try to play up a little bit of the red in the ranuncula out here because I want it to feed into this. I don't want it to be like right down the middle, the two. And I'll play up some of the browns, burnt sienna, raw umber in here, so that it again can feed in and kind of share the space. And I think that that has to do with color harmony, composition too, but also color harmony. So this, I'm going to grab the yellow, that's part of the tulip, and go here with it. I'll bring that up to top where this is all being kind of illuminated. I'm going to get into the stalk, so this one is actually here as well. So I'm going to put this part of the tulip going down in value here just a little bit, so that then the transition out of the shadow works still. And then I go and punch in the really light light of the stalk. So grab my lead white, and through here it's really bright. So that's a nice thing about the lead white, is it goes on the painting or the panel in a different way than the titanium does. It really just lays nicely on top of the base layer. So I think just because of the consistency of it and the fact that it's so soft and gooey, that it kind of just sticks to the panel. Now right behind it is that ranuncula that I'm going to try to push down darker. How much time we got?
25 too, so you got 25 minutes.
Okay, that's good. So the tulip back there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the phlox over top of it here, and there's a part that's in shadow. Then I have the stem of the allium, which is, see, I'll get it. I just, bear with me here. The names I'll eventually figure out. The stem is back here. And then I'm looking at a leaf that comes across that way. Dark against light, light against dark. As you see the transition of the form against the background on those leaves, it reminds me of just kind of what Vermeer was so interested in with his little paintings of rooms, and how he'd have the hat or something that would be light against dark, and then the face would be the background, or I guess it would be the back of the hair or something would be dark against light, and then the face would be light against dark. Each brushstroke is an opportunity to find the location of the plane and how it sits in space according to light source. So as they travel up and face the light more, it can get a lighter as they turn up. If you do a bad brushstroke, Sargent used to wipe off, right? You hear all the time stories of him trying it again. So I just didn't like that one, so I'm going to change the drawing, get the right value. Once you get the right value, you come back, attempt it again. Don't like that one either. Maybe it's my brush. being that this is the hard brush. Dirty brush. Pink. The flocks are not coming through as being really clear. Maybe that's something I could do tomorrow. I'll just touch on it right now though, because I think it could use a little bit of work here. Light green. I'm gonna put a little bit more Viridian out and finish this up for today. Grab a new brush. I was having a hard time there for a second. I wasn't getting the strokes that I want, so. Sorry, sometimes I go so fast on the back and forth. I feel sorry for Louis back there. It's like, my mind keeps changing. I need to go even lighter, so I'm going to grab every time I need to go lighter, see, I put if I would have put the white here, it really would have messed me up because I'm taking that new fresh lead white and putting it here, and you're not going to get as light as that. So I clean my brush and put it to the right so that I have a shot at getting the note that I want. I'm going to come back over here and I want it to be as bright as I possibly can. Then I grab the green, some highlights over here. On this one, these are hanging down, the stem in front. And then there's the Solomon's, is it bell? Solomon's seal. Solomon's seal through here. So just like over there, I gotta start to kind of incorporate these as part of the composition here. And they get back in shadow as they go underneath. They get really dark. So I'm using Viridian, raw umber, white, cat yellow pale. So that's that. This background brush. I need to fix the shape of this. Go to my green. So it's all about adjusting that base. If I have any secrets to offer you, that's it. Too pink. Oh, that transition is interesting. I love that. This comes out. Just catching light right here. Seems like it just gets really light. It comes out of the shadow. Oh, look at that. That's awesome. The green. This thing is just, you can show how it's drooping. It's just fallen. Either I didn't notice that at all, or it's fallen a little bit. So I'm going to grab that. And so it was pretty far yesterday, but not. I feel like it's gone even further. And it's swung to the right. What do I want to do? Do I want it to be here? Do I want it to be here? Let's try here first. I think I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna leave. Have you ever done like Photoshop? It sounded really southern right there. Have you ever done Photoshop? Just hit the undo button. All right, I'm gonna try again. We'll have two of them. Artistic license. Yeah. I just wanted, this shoots up that way, I want this to shoot down lower. It's like some weird string things that are coming off of it. Okay, so background in this vase. Not going to get into it too much. I'm just hinting at it for tomorrow. And then there's a refracted light, which is bouncing, picking up the back wall and shooting it to my eye here at the bottom of the vase, the glass. Here's another little tip that if you paint it lighter, you'll be able to glaze over it the next day. So setting it up. I have about, let's see, I have just enough room to like squeeze it in. So what I would say is the bottom is around here, and then the shadow back this way. Take my paper towel, kind of soften it. Oops, wrong brush. Thinking about the back of the table, where it's at, more or less. All right, I think it's about time to call it for the day and answer some questions. Hopefully that gives you a sense of the speed at which I work on the second day. There's now really, I mean, I'm going to emphasize this tomorrow again. Really, tomorrow is going to be even more about adjusting this base. Today was, I was going through and finding some more drawing, but tomorrow is really, I shouldn't be, having to, the painting's almost done. It's just really about tweaking things, making things go darker, making things turn, finding a little bit of the drawing. All right. A question from Paul Barker. Can you speak about how you varnish your paintings? How long do you have to wait for it to dry, and what type of varnish, how many coats, etc.? I use a thing called Gamvar from Gamblin, and I usually let my paintings dry 2 or 3 days, and it's a synthetic varnish so that it allows for the painting to still continue to dry underneath. But the test is if you are able to touch it and it doesn't bend the little glob of paint that you have up there. If it doesn't move or adjust, then it should be good good to go to varnish it. Do you think about future framing as well when you paint to the edge of the panel? Just a little bit, like in this scenario. If it's really close, a floater frame may be a better option. But if you paint on canvas, you could probably paint a little bit bigger and then stretch it later. I know Richard Lack used to do that. Lately, Josh has been doing it, and I think it's a useful way to kind of not run into that situation where you're running out of room. But I mean, I feel like I've done this so many times that that I was calling it close there, but because the composition is going off the page on other parts than off the panel, and then I think this is okay. Okay. As far as questions, and do we have? Is there? Should I just wrap it up, or? Looks like, from what I can tell, I'm You got everything? It's 1 o'clock. You guys have any thoughts, or?
I think just give them a couple just keep typing.
Let them. Okay, one just came in?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Absolutely enthralled by the beauty of your painting. Thank you, Rhonda. How did you decide what colors to include as your particular palette? The left side seems more textured than the right on the screen. Would you seek to add more texture, or smooth out, or just leave it? I have Sansador. How is it different from Gamsol? Does it matter which you use? How do they differ? No, you can use whatever solvent you want. I've never tried Sansador, so I don't know what that acts like, but at the beginning I mentioned you can use turpentine, you can use Gamsol, you can use terpenoid. Any of those would work. Basically, it's a dilutant. It's to thin out your paint. What it does is it breaks the paint particles, though, in a way that you have to be careful, because the strength is then diminished. So part of the idea of using mediums and oil in your painting is that it continues to build on that idea of how the paint then adheres to one another. And I think you should limit the use of Gamsol or any of that at the later stages. You should always continue to get heavier and heavier in your medium. The colors, actually, I'm going to try to play up this violet a little bit, probably the one that's to the left on the bouquet. The textures just happen to be going in that direction. Maybe I'll come back and add a little bit more texture here tomorrow. I was just looking as we were starting in on the questions. I was thinking, oh, it would have been nice if I would have just added a thick note of the magenta over here. So I'm going to do that because we can. So I was thinking about this facing the light and how these are all catching the light and how it goes with this here. So that was something I saw that I wanted to do, so that it just pulls you that way, and then these light greens go with the pinks. And texture, you can also adjust it. Tomorrow I can come in and I can scrape with my palette knife if I think that this is a little bit too textured compared to this. So that's a variable that it can alter, is what I'm trying to say. What company makes your panels? I make my panels. The company that makes the ACM panel is it's Piedmont Plastics out of Raleigh. but you can find any manufacturer of sign material, like billboards, signs, and they should carry this kind of thing. It's in the ACM panel, aluminum composite material, and I'm sure they'll have it. You can check it out. Going back. So yeah, in tomorrow's, just to wrap up and talk about what? Oh, oh, okay. Who? I just did see something, but what happened? Kathleen says, thank you for another awesome day of the demo. Could Michael talk about the color combo he is using for then the, okay. A wonderful opportunity to learn from the best. Thank you, Kathleen. So the color combos, maybe the idea of the bouquet and what I was doing in the bouquet, and that was a decision that was made from the florist. So we had asked if they could add some color in there, because I know people had asked me before the live stream if we could add, say, like the deep reds or these violets or yellows. So I don't know what angle the florist wanted me to look at this from, but I'm imagining they balanced it for some reason. They wanted to have this violet maybe appear more. So, but I've been enjoying this process of working with a florist and letting them do it, because this idea of the allium and the pitcher plant and the phlox and the mint, I would never have painted, and I just love that because it adds variety and different rhythms, and the sweet peas, and we got it all in here now. So it's been a lot of fun. So maybe that's the color combination. But I think that's it for questions. I'm going to sign off. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Hopefully everyone can join us live tomorrow. It's Saturday. You won't be working, maybe, and we can get a big audience with lots of questions. So I look forward to it, and until then.